What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Bmoney Beastin Athletics Recap. This week, we had a sit-down interview with Scott Herpst. He's over all of Walker and Catoosa County sports for the Catoosa Walker News. Interesting guy. Been in the business for 23 years covering Ringgold, Lakeview, Fordo, Lafayette, Gordon Lee, you name it. Cross country, wrestling, baseball, you name it. He's done it all. Has a fantastic story about the 2012 Ridgeland Panthers that made the state finals in football, how that went down. It was really interesting to hear. A lot of really good insight on how technology has changed print, right? Like how Facebook has impacted the news and newspapers and things like that. It was a very interesting conversation. I really enjoyed it. Let's get right to it. Bmoney Beastin Athletics. Custom apparel, branded apparel, team gear, all available. You got a design idea that you always wanted printed but never got done? Hit us up, info@bmoneybeastinathletics.com. You got a football team, a baseball team, you need uniforms? Hit us up, info@bmoneybeastinathletics.com. And always remember, show up and show out. What's up, guys? I'm here with Scott Herpst. Your title is?
Sports editor of the Walker County Messenger and the Catoosa County News.
How long you been in this field?
My 23rd anniversary was just about a week ago. So I started at the Walker County Messenger on October 27th of 2000.
Wow.
And was promoted to sports editor 10 minutes after I got there. Was not anticipating that. And then about 6.5 years ago, the girl who was the sports editor of Catoosa County News, she left.
Was that Misty Martin?
It's Misty Martin.
Okay.
And she left, and I took over both papers on an interim basis until we found somebody else, which we did, and then we lost him after about 3 or 4 months. So they wanted me to do it full time. So we negotiated for a little bit because I'm like, that's a lot of stuff. But, yeah, I've been doing both now for about 6.5 years.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
You probably covered me at some point. I played football at Ringgold 2003 to 06. I was in the Sean Gray era,
yeah.
Right? So I was there during that time. So let's
and
go
of course,
back.
I was with Stump on Sports, too. So
yeah.
If I didn't cover, you personally, we were probably there with TV or something.
Right. Yeah, I talked to Misty several times over the years, like during that time frame. Let's. How did you get in? Like, let's see. Where are you from? Let's start
I'm from
there.
Lakeview. I grew up in the Lakeview community, technically Rossville, but I grew up in the Lakeview community. Went to LFO High School. Was on the school newspaper staff. Did sports for about 3 years.
That's awesome.
Dalton. I got my core classes out of the way at Dalton because they didn't have much in the way of junior journalism at the time. And then transferred to West Georgia in I've been fall in '93. And graduated 2 years later.
And with journalism was like your major.
With mass communications, yeah. I went in radio and television.
Okay.
Because the first day I was in class, my faculty advisor, I said, "What's the main difference between print and electric, other than the obvious?" And he said, "You want to make money?" I said, "Well, yes." He said, "Don't go in print." He was right, of course. But so I went in. The plan was to become a play-by-play guy or to do the sports on the news or ESPN. That's what I always wanted to do. And I loved the TV work. I loved the radio stuff. But for some reason, I didn't like the way I looked on camera. I didn't like the way I sounded. And so I didn't pursue it after. I didn't do any internships or anything like that. And I really I should have been doing all the stuff, and I didn't. And so it was 5 years after that before I landed the job with the paper, and which, looking back on it now, is hilarious because I've been in front of cameras my whole life. I did commercials, and we clogged, and we were on TV and all this stuff. So, I'm perfectly comfortable being around cameras, but seeing myself and hearing myself, I'm like, I didn't like the way it looked. I'm like, I don't have that look. I don't have that voice. And looking back now, 20 years later, here I am. I've done PA for the Lookouts and at UTC games and people recognize my voice now, and now I'm comfortable with it. Real comfortable.
20
with
years
it.
after the fact.
Yeah, 20 years after the fact. But 25, 30 years ago, I didn't know if it was for me.
It's funny you said that. I follow a guy named Chris Van Vliet. He interviews, actors and pro wrestlers, and he said something like that one time. He's like, man, he goes, you're not gonna like how you look, and you're not gonna like how you sound. He goes, it's okay, get over it.
Yeah. Well, everything's so different now. But two of the guys I went to college with, he just looked like an anchor person, and he was an anchor man at several major markets for probably 25 or 30 years, and another guy. He had the perfect, radio voice. He was already doing on-air work down in Carrollton in a professional capacity while he's going to school to learn how to do it.
Okay.
He was in the updated studio. He knew how to do all this stuff, and I guess I was just intimidated because I'm like, that's how you're supposed to sound. That's how you're supposed to look. I've got neither one of those. So all I knew was I didn't want to write. I didn't want to edit. I didn't want to film. I didn't want to be the director. I love sports too much. I wanted to be the guy who went there, who watched the game, who took the notes, and came back and said, "Here's what happened tonight," and
that's
produced the highlight package. Yeah, my whole thing was sports. That's what I know. That's what I love to do. And like I said, I really got lucky and kind of fell into it.
What season is your favorite? Since you cover everything from football to softball to wrestling to basketball to.
I love them all, but I love the fall.
Yeah, everybody loves football, right?
It's football. And people ask me, what's your favorite sport? It's football. It always has been football. I remember going to high school football games when I was 7, 8 years old. I remember Mom and Dad, you can't get up and run around and play football. You got to sit there and watch the game if I'm going to buy you a ticket. Well, I didn't care. I wanted to watch the football games, so I would watch the football games. And, it's just always been a huge part of my life. And then, of course, in the fall, I enjoy softball and volleyball and cross country and stuff like that. The weather's not too hot at times, but that football just seals it for me. I love all of the sports, but
football season, especially being somebody in the South. I've always said that my best times of my life, like of course I'm a father, that was a great time and things, but as in my youth, there's nothing that you can't get the adrenaline or any you can't repackage what Friday nights are, right? Like I always said, like you hear the crowd, you hear the band, the wind's a little cool, right? Mm-hmm. You hear the PA guy, you got the tunnel you're about to walk out of. It's just like this adrenaline rush that if you could bottle it, you'd be a millionaire, right? Like
I've told the story numerous times. I've written about it. The first day I was at work as a sports editor at the Barker County Messenger, I was completely out of my element at the time. I had no idea what I was going to be doing, because it had just been, sprung on me. You're going to be the sports editor. And I was like, well, who's going to be the writer? Well, you're going to be the writer too, And I was like, you got to be kidding me. I didn't sign up for this. And we had to learn about layout design, all this stuff, the newspaper. And then the sports editor, who was the sports editor, who's been promoted, that's why I was getting his job. He was going to be the managing editor. And about 7 o'clock, my head's just spinning trying to learn all this stuff. And about 7 o'clock, he said, you ready to go? And I was like, are we done already? He's like, no. And I just looked at him, and he's like, it's Friday? I'm like, yeah. He goes, football? I'm like, oh, okay. So we get to the football game. We covered, it was Lakeview versus Lafayette versus LFO. And we were down on the sidelines. First time I've ever been on the sidelines for a football game. And it's that moment right before the game's about to start. And both sides of the stands are going nuts. The bands are playing. The football players are on the field. And the referees are counting to make sure everybody's got 11 men on the field. And it was like all of a sudden, everything just got super, super quiet. For me, it was the weirdest thing ever. It just like everything got super, super quiet. And I just kind of just did a small circle. And I could smell the hamburgers cooking. I could smell the grass. I could see the lights. And it was kind of a haze. And I was like, this is what I'm going to be doing.
Yeah.
And then, okay, I can handle this. And then, the ref blew the whistle. Everything, got loud again. We did the whole football game. We got back to the office. He wrote the story that night, and we walked to the car. And he said, it's about 12:30 in the morning. We'd been up for like 17 hours. And he said, do you think you can do this? He said, if I turn this over to you Monday, do you think you can handle it? I said, oh, God, yeah. And he said, all right. He said, if you need any help, just let me know. and just took the ball and ran with it.
So every week, like during high school football season, you guys pick a game and you go to a game for that story, and then you keep scores?
Well, what I do, I've got 6 high schools now that play football. Catoosa and Walker County both. I got 6 high schools. Now this year and next year, and we'll see what happens after that, but this year, 5 of those schools are in the exact same region.
Yes.
Everybody but Heritage. I got Lafayette, Gordon Lee, Ridgeland, Ringo, LFO. They're all in Region 6-3A. So it's a dream come true for me because almost every single night I got 2 teams playing against each other.
Right.
Which is great. So what I do, basically, if there's a huge game coming up, 2 teams are undefeated, or if there's a big rivalry game coming up, I'll probably end up covering that game. But I try to space it out where I've seen everybody as equal amount of times as I can all year, because I don't want anybody to think, and that was my rule from day one, I don't want to be biased towards any one school, any one program, any one sport. I'm going to see everybody equally. Everybody's going to get as equal amount of coverage as we possibly can. So I'll just pick which game I'm going to that night. I'll cover that game. I'll have to get in touch with the stat guys or the coaches the rest of the weekend, and try to find out who did what, or if there's a team playing in Dalton, the Dalton paper might help out with the story, or Calhoun.
Right.
We kind of help each other out every once in a while. And then, I keep my own stats. The guy showed me how he did his, and I've kind of modified it a little bit, but it's still the same system. I got a clipboard. I got a score sheet and a pen, and I write everything down. Now, of course, we got huddle and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And the guys punch it in and hit enter at the end of the game, and I've got everything on my computer from the entire game. It's like the Game Changer app, which is perfectly titled. Like now, it's got every single pitch, softball, volleyball, softball and baseball. I've got everything strike by strike as it happens. Cost me like $3.99 a month or $2.99 a month to follow as many teams as I want.
See, that's amazing. Yeah.
A lot of stuff has happened. Technology has happened to make my job a whole lot easier. Of course, I still have to write all the stuff, but gathering the information to write the story, which used to take, a phone call and having to go through, or they'd send me a picture of the scorebook, and I'd have to go through and try to figure everything out. Now it's all right there for me. I can write a softball, baseball story in like 10 minutes.
That's awesome.
Never have been to the game, didn't step 1 foot in the stadium, but I've got everything I need right there. As long as they enter the information, I've got it. And which helps a lot when you've got, I've probably got 150 to 200 teams between high school and middle school that I try to cover every single year. And I can't be spending an hour on every single game. So the least amount of time it takes, the better. But I still do all my own stats pretty much, and then I write the stories on Friday nights and get that on the website, and then they come out in print. We have to get them, I may have to edit them or shorten them or add some stuff to them later, and then we have to get them ready over the weekend, and they put the pages together for us on Sunday nights now, and we ship them off Monday, and they come out on Wednesday, and then we start over again.
You said 150 teams, and originally the Bmoney Beastin Athletics recap was to cover like youth sports, right?
Yeah.
Youth sports, middle school, and I know like you were at the Walker Cup yesterday, right? And you got some coverage on that, which that's great. But is that why that it's so hard to cover like youth age sports, because there's so much to cover already?
Oh yeah. I'm the only person in the sports department for 2 counties.
That's wild to me.
Now I get help every once in a while. There's people that will send me pictures or whatever, and if I need to call another paper in our company or even outside of our company, I know enough people. They'll send me stuff. They'll send me a picture. They'll send me a box score or whatever. But for the most part, everything that's in that paper I've typed up or I've written, and there's just there's so much stuff. Like I said, in the fall, we've got football, we got softball, we got volleyball, we got cross country, and we got cheerleading, because cheerleading just finished up. So we technically have 5 sports. Then you count Oakwood, who's not in the GHSA, Oakwood Christian. They're also playing soccer in the fall. So right now I'm covering 6 different sports.
Right.
Over 7 high schools and 9 different middle schools. And you got a boys and a girls varsity team most of the time for every single sport. Now do the math.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
6 sports, 12 to 15 teams per school, 16 schools.
Hard to cover.
Yeah, and everything starts at 5 o'clock everywhere, or 4:30 or whatever. High school football is about the only one, we're at 7:30 at night, and there's really nothing else. But yeah, it's nothing in the September and October. I may have literally 30 teams a night playing softball and volleyball, middle school football. There's cross country meet. So a lot of my time each of those nights is just spent, okay, I'm going to get here at 4:30. I'm going to take pictures of the first quarter of this football game. Then I'm going to run over to the softball field because they're playing softball over there. Then I got to drive over there and catch the end of this cross-country meet, and then maybe get back to the high school in time to get a few pictures for volleyball. And the coaches all know now, send me your stuff after the game because I've drilled it in their heads for 20 years. There's no way I can be all these places at once. But send me the stuff. I'll make sure it gets typed up. And then when I get home, I eat dinner, maybe see my wife for a few minutes, and then I'm off to the computer, and 9 o'clock till whenever I run out of stuff to write about or get done. And it may be 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, and then I email the coaches I didn't hear from and say, hey, I need to get some stuff because I want to make sure everybody's covered equally. Send me your stuff the next morning, and I get up on, say, a Friday morning, and I'll spend 5 or 6 hours catching up on whatever, I did get to type the night before. So there's not much free time, but the kids work hard, the coaches work hard. I feel I owe it to them to get their stuff up and running on the online. And look, I mean, the kids want to see their names in the paper. The moms want to see their kids' names in the paper. I was that kid one time. I wanted to see my name in the paper. So I know what it meant to me when my name got in the paper. So that's why I try to get as many kids out there recognized as possible.
I love that, man. I in the summer, this is something I've always wondered. I know there's always a sports page, 52 weeks a year. In the summer, what's going on? You got workouts, you got camps, you got all these things. How hard is it to find things to write about in the summer?
You can always find something to write about. We've got, like over here, the Catoosa swim team swims. I do most, now, back when I only was doing one county, I would go out and I would try to cover as much youth football as I could, and youth basketball and stuff like that. But I'm going to be 50 in a week. And, I'm slowing down. I'm getting older now, and I just don't have all the energy that I used to have. I'm trying to get it back. But, after 23 years, I'm like, I need a break during the summer. Be perfectly honest.
Oh, yeah.
Because when we start picture day for football in July, we'll be doing 7-on-7s and the start of the season basically in July, all the way through. It goes nonstop until school's out, and like the end of May, first week of June. I have about 6 weeks where we don't technically have any games to cover. But I mean, there's always games playing. They have summer leagues for baseball and basketball, and there's 7-on-7s. So I will go out and shoot some of that if I need something. I'll go out and I'll try to cover the Dizzy Dean baseball tournaments that are in town. If there's another big tournament in town, something like that. But honestly, for the last few years, I'm doing my best just to recharge.
And I get that.
Yeah.
I get that.
And it's not that I don't want to cover all this stuff that's going on, because it's important and I do my best to try to cover it. But if not, when we get back around to August, when football practice starts and softball practice starts and volleyball practice starts, then I'm already gassed, and I know, each night, it's
a grind.
Yeah.
You're on a grind.
I am. I mean, it's every day is 14 to 16 to 18 hours.
You hear this, right,
Pretty
folks?
much. Yeah. It's so glamorous, everybody, you can see sports for a living, right? Yeah, it is. And it's a
lot of work.
I get paid to do sports, and it's the best thing about the job. But, to do the job like I think it needs to be done, to make sure everybody gets equal amount of coverage and stuff, then I have to put in the work. And like I said, it takes 18-hour days sometimes and 4 or 5 hours sleep and back up and at it again. But that's how I feel it should be done. And if I'm not putting that work in, and the work suffers, and I know it. That goes for anything, like a career of any kind, sport of any kind. Let's say you're married to your job, but You about have to be. You know,
On
you
anything you do that you want to be successful
Yeah,
at.
people ask me, say, how do you do all this stuff? Most of it's organization and being prepared, and being able to change on the fly if a game gets canceled that you were planning on going to, because sometimes things happen. It rains, or team shows up, the schedules are wrong, or the umpires didn't show up, or whatever. The main thing is you just got to want to do it.
Right.
You just got to want to be good at your job. And I take a lot of pride in that paper that comes out every week. And I take a lot of pride in those stories I put on every single night. And I can tell when I've mailed it in a couple times, because I'm just so exhausted. But you got to push through it. One of my favorite quotes, I don't know where it came from, I heard it said one time, it said, being a professional means doing your job on the days you don't feel like doing your job.
Right. And that's the same thing as like an athlete that trains, and like, it's with anything. That's an open-ended like quote. I love
ethic.
that. Yeah, work ethic.
It's work ethic, and I kind of learned that from my dad and he never actually ever said it to me, but I could just tell. I knew he didn't like his job, but he was getting paid, and he had to put food on the table, and he would go out and he would do his job, and he was great at his job, even if he didn't necessarily like the people he worked for or was having a bad day. But he went out and did his job. He was worked for the post office. When he died, I kid you not, there was probably 50 people that came to the funeral home, and all of them said, "You don't know me, but my dad was your dad was my postman." How many people you go to your postman's funeral? He was on the same route in Rossville for like 25 years. And literally 40 or 50 people. And that's how much of an impact that he had, because he took pride in his job. He would check on people, that he knew were shut in. If there was like something important they were getting, a social security check or some kind of medication through the mail, even though it wasn't technically he was supposed to do it at the time, he hand delivered it. I remember him saying, I'm going to take a gallon of milk to this lady because she can't get out. She's out of milk, because he talked to her at the door. So it's just doing that little bit extra. And like I said, I learned from him, if somebody's going to pay you to do a job, do it to the best of your ability, do it as perfect as you can the first time. And that's what I try to do every single day.
That's what I did when, my career has kind of went in different directions, but I've kind of been in the same industry. I got out of high school and had a chance to play college football. I was going to go to Cumberland College. I decided I didn't want to do that. I got into the cable field. I worked in cable for years. Now I run a school full time, and I run Bmoney Beastin Athletics. And on something and regardless of what I did throughout all these years, like when I was a tech, I was so OCD that things had to be this way.
Yeah.
And my metrics reflected that, right? And I feel like that works again for any kind of career.
It does.
Your pops there was a postman, like that. Doing a little more here than you are always required to makes a big difference.
Yeah.
Now I do got a question for you that is very interesting to me.
Okay.
You started this 23 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
In 23 years, we've seen technology completely revamp itself over and over and over.
Yeah.
So you're talking about from the time you started, what would we say 23 years ago? So that was 2000.
It was October of 2000.
So in 2000, let's just put this in perspective. In 2000, I think the PlayStation 1 was the PlayStation 1.
Yep.
So now we're at the PlayStation 5 in 2022.
Yeah.
In 2000, there was no social media, right?
No.
Social media came out 07, I think. 07, was it 07? 06 maybe? MySpace was probably the first.
Yeah, MySpace, probably about the mid-2000s.
Yeah, 2005, 6, 7, somewhere in there. And then Facebook, I know, launched in 07. That's why I said that. But MySpace was a couple years prior to that.
Yeah.
So when Facebook hit, and you're doing this job, so when Facebook exploded, because MySpace, I had one in high school. I didn't really use it, It just had played music and whatever. But like, you take Facebook is launched in 07. By 08, it's exploded, right? So now we're 15 years down the road, whatever it is. And how has social media and being able to communicate with people like at any given second of any given day, anywhere, changed what you do? Right? So like online, right? People that buy print, like I still buy a newspaper, right? Like when I was in high school, I was kind of nerdy, right? I don't know if I was nerdy, but I kind of was in a way. like I would stop in the morning and I would buy Sobe. Remember Sobe, the drinks?
Yep.
I would buy Sobe and I would buy a newspaper.
Yeah.
And I would sit and I would read all of it. I'd read the obituaries and what people are selling and the sports page. And I don't know why I did that, but I enjoyed it. So like me, I still buy a newspaper. But a lot of people consume everything through the internet, right?
Yeah.
Like all their, like right now, whoever sees this is going to see it through YouTube. So like, how has in 23 years social media and the internet itself changed your job title? Like, what is different between day one and day 9 million?
Oh, in a lot of ways, it hadn't changed it at all, because, like I said, I'm still old school. Like I said, people, try to, you need to get a tablet, and you need to get this, and I'm like, my pad will never run out of battery.
True.
If I got a pen and a paper, I will write that. Even if I have it on a computer, I will still write stuff down. I said, because files can be lost, they can be stolen, they can be deleted accidentally. It's happened before.
Yes.
So in a lot of ways, I haven't changed what I've done. But at the same time, perfect example, a couple weeks ago, we had a couple teams that were playing in Columbus for the state softball championship. And with that Game Changer app, instead of me having to get on, the site, the website, and typing in updates every 2 or 3 minutes, a lot of people follow me on my Facebook page. All I had to do was go in there and, I'd watch the Game Changer, see what happened, wrote it down, and then just said, hey, here's a softball update from Columbus. Gordon Lee just scored 2 in the top of the 4th. They've retaken the lead, blah, 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 blah. They have to win this game to advance. Heritage is, playing later tonight. And it'll reach like 500-600 people, really, really quickly. I didn't even have this sounds crazy now, think about it. The first year I did the job, I didn't have a cell phone.
Really?
I did not have a cell phone.
In 2000?
Yeah, 2000. I didn't get a cell phone until 2001, and then it was one of those Motorola, thick as a brick, had the two-way talk to text, because we were with Stump on Sports, and we could text each other the scores, and we could talk to each other and whatever. I still have that phone. We call it the Zach Morris. So you had to lift the antenna on it and stuff like that.
Right.
It had no graphic. It was all just text or whatever. And I used that phone for almost 10 years. As a matter of fact, the day I took it to finally, I was getting a new phone finally, and the guy, the paint all wore off. The guy's like, what model is this? And he goes, I said, I don't have no clue anymore, because the paint's all wore off. He goes, does this thing even still work? I said, yeah, it still works. And it took him 45 minutes to figure out what kind of phone it was. And then to tell me, yeah, there's no SIM card in it. I was like, yeah, I knew that. That's why I wrote down all my numbers on my contacts on legal pads. I had like 600 numbers at the time, because I'm like, when that phone's dead,
and
all
this
that's
is
gone.
2000 to like 2010.
Yeah, 2010, 2011. Yeah, I used it for like 10 years.
This makes me feel old, because in 2003, 2007, I was playing high school football.
Yeah, yeah. So I did. I mean, I got kids I covered the first year who just turned like 40, 41 years old.
Wild.
I've got, matter of fact, we had a girl last year from Gordon Lee, because I remember the moment it happened, it freaked me out. She's signing a scholarship to go play college volleyball. And her mom and her stepdad are there, and it's 2 kids that I covered when they were in high school.
Wow.
And I'm like, okay, wait a minute. How old am I now? But yeah, I did, I did it for a year without a cell phone. But like I said, with the social media now, I can reach so many people so much faster. And some people love having that digital stuff where they can read it. I still like to feel a newspaper in my hand. Always have. I'm like you. I would go out and buy a newspaper. I'd basically throw all of it away but the sports section. But I would read the sports section every single day of my life, which I didn't know I was training for a future job, but that's basically what it boiled down to.
I even looked at like baseball standings, like how
yeah.
many games back are the Phillies or the Braves.
Word for word, cover to cover, every single thing was in there. And I still enjoy, reading sports sections today. But, you're still going to have that section of the population that, like us, we enjoy that feel of newspaper and having it right there in front of us. But everything's changed so much. People are on the go so much. They want to be able to just look and look for certain things and not have to hunt and find.
Right.
Now you can just type in a keyword. I had a dad tell me one time, I get a Facebook alert every time my daughter's name pops up online. And I'm like, I'm writing stories like 3 o'clock in the morning. Yeah, I don't care.
No, I don't.
I'm like, okay, well, if you're fine with it, I'm just letting you know. Sometimes I don't get the stuff until really, really late at night. But it's changed. It's changed the game dramatically, and we've been talking about the demise and the death of newspapers for a long time. I still think the smaller town papers, they're always going to have them. People still like the scrapbook and stuff like that. When we were doing our football contest, we used to, you had to buy a paper and you had to cut it out and pick your games and stuff like that. And then it went all digital, and people that were down in Atlanta or Marietta were coming up to try to tell us all this stuff. We're going to give away like prizes like an iPad and all this stuff. And I said, you don't know our audience. I was like, our readership likes the newspaper. They don't want the digital stuff. They don't want an iPad because they don't know how it works. They just want to cut it out, fill out their entry, drop it off, and get their $30 check and be on the way.
Right.
So you still got that section. That's why I think the small town newspapers will hopefully always have a place, because just the population, the demographics and stuff like that. With older people, they seem to like that more. Now, we'll see how that changes, 20, 30 more years down the road when they become older, and, newspapers might be gone by then. But there's still a charm to it.
It's funny you said that. I always correlate, like, print, right, with, like, technology. And if you look at technology in general, like, I was in the cable field, right? In the cable field, when I was entering the cable field, home telephone was starting to die, right?
Yeah.
And this was 2008, right? 2007, 8. And it was starting to kind of die off. Well, everybody was saying, well, it's going to be gone, it's going to be gone, it's going to be gone in 5 years or 6 years or whatever. Well, at this point, I've been out of high school. This fall was 16 years since I played high school football. And so that's what I always go back to, is my senior year. Like, how long have I been doing this? There's still a ton of people with home telephones, right?
We still got one.
Yeah, still.
We never use it.
Yeah,
but
right.
It's there if I
need it.
But
it's there, right? Yeah. So, this is going to die, this is going to die, this is going to die. And then you look 16 years later, and there's still a ton of people that have it.
Which is probably because, we needed the landline, because, when dial-up internet first started, of course, that took forever. And then we plugged it right into the phone line through a modem.
Right.
That's why we still had the landline on the wall, because we had to use it for that.
Right, yeah.
And Wi-Fi and everything.
And now it's like internet, like telephone. Everybody has a cell phone in 2022, right? Everybody has a cell phone. So, like, by being able to, like, I'm going to Google, Gordon Lee and Lakeview played last night, what's the score? And and I do that sometimes, right? Like, and I'll look and see, like, the local scores, or I'll get on Max Preps or whatever it is, like, who did this, what, where, But in the same time, it's not the same as being able to read, okay, first quarter, this happened. I feel like that's never going to go away. I feel like in the future, if print did die, like in general, it's still a needed substance for digital consumption.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I think it's always going to be there. I think it's going to continuously morph. And I do think we're probably 30 years away from any kind of thought of that. Because, like, we're 16 years in, we still got home telephones, right?
Yeah.
Even if you don't use them, people's got them,
They're still there.
And if nothing else, a lot of times they have them for alarm systems, right? Like, there's a reason that still exists, right? The same way as newspaper. Before I let you go, I'm just going to ask you one more thing. You've been in this North Georgia area here for 23 years covering sports, and you were hooked up with Stump, and you worked with Misty Martin, who sweet lady, known her a long time, and you've covered, and right now you basically cover all of Region 3A up here. And who's the one team outside of Heritage?
Heritage is in 4A, and of course Oakwood Christian is, they're GAPPS now, but I still cover them.
And that's
in Chickamauga.
Chickamauga. Yeah. Okay, I always wondered where that was. And in all these years, I'm going to ask you this last thing. You've covered a lot of sports, a lot of players. Give me your top 5 players that you've covered in your career. And if there's more, if there's 10, we can do 10 or 3. We can, whatever you want. I just want to know your top players you've covered.
I'm trying to think, because it kind of depends on the sport. I'd say for football, I'm trying to think. It's funny now. I look at these NFL games. I'm like, I covered that kid. I saw that kid play in high school. I covered him. Like Cleveland and Cincinnati played the other night.
Mm-hmm.
Von Bell, Nick Chubb.
Yeah.
I covered both of them.
Right.
I was at that game when they met. Each other a couple times. Just in the counties itself. I mean, Vaughn's probably the best football player I ever saw.
Right.
Although there were some other ones. That same year, Darrell Bridges, who was a teammate of his that year, had one of the best, probably the best season for a running back I've ever seen. That team that went to the Dome, I think they ran for 5,600 yards in 15 games.
Wow. That Ridgeland team in 2012.
I know he had I'll never forget, he had 1,100, 1,200 yards by the end of the regular season. And they played 5 extra games, and he finished with 2,400 yards.
That's a season.
He ran for as much in the playoffs as he did, and just got stronger and stronger as the game went on and stuff. So guys like that, I'm trying to think. There's been so many great players that have really I've got to see a whole lot and do a whole lot. I remember games as much as
What's the greatest game you remember?
Ridgeland Marist. The state semifinal over there that year. Marist came in ranked number 2 in the state, had about 4 or 5 Division I players, and that game just went back and forth. And Darrell broke a long run, start of the 4th quarter to put them ahead. Marist came back, went ahead. Extra point got blocked. Ridgeland comes down, scores on a halfback pass with 36 seconds to go to retake a 1-point lead. They got the extra point. Marist comes right back down the field. They had a quarterback, I think was going to Boston College. He had about 4 straight passes to the tight end, got out of bounds, setting up for a 31-yard field goal on the final play of the game. This was a chip shot. This kid was Division I kicker. And we're up in the press box, and there's literally 10 to 12,000 people in the stadium. I've never seen a high school game with that many people around here. And we're just thinking, God, got so close, and, that step away from playing in the Georgia Dome for the finals. And they snapped it, and the kick went up, and it was like everything just got silent for a second. And where he was angled, he was on the left hash. So I'm sitting in the press box watching. And when the kick went up in the air, I just dropped my head because I'm like, dadgummit, I'd hate to have to talk to the coach after this. They worked so hard to get here. And I heard this thud, and I looked up and I went, did that hit the upright? And we looked, and the officials are looking at each other, and I'm like, are they going to call anything? And then they went, no good. And I mean, it was like Neyland Stadium, a couple weeks ago. I mean, everybody just stormed the field, 10,000 people.
That's unbelievable.
And we all, this is not supposed to be cheering in the press box. You're supposed to be neutral.
Right.
We're up there going crazy, high-fiving
Were you
the
talking
PA
about
guys.
Rossville, Georgia? Yeah. Right? That's...
And it was on the 60th or the 50th anniversary of Rossville beating North Clayton for the state title.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah, they had actually had some of the old Rossville guys earlier that year for one of the games or whatever, celebrating them. And then that team wins that game and goes to the final. A few years back, they had played down in Carrollton and upset. They had beaten Carrollton for the region title a year before, and the Carrollton people talked on social media for a year. Well, our quarterback was hurt, and if he hadn't been hurt, you wouldn't have won. And so very next year, they end up meeting for a region championship again. Kid was healthy and everything. And, you're going to see the real Carrollton team. Ridge went down there, beat them 28-26.
I love
it. In Gresham Stadium, 15,000-seat stadium at the time. And there was a Gordon Lee Boyd Buchanan game one year that they just traded touchdowns for 4 quarters, and then Gordon Lee won in overtime. I remember LFO blocking an extra point down Northwest Whitfield to beat them by 1. And just so many great games. And then I remember there was right after I got there, I hadn't been there 3 months, Gordon Lee and Tryon played a basketball game, went to 6 overtimes.
Wow.
And 2 of the overtimes, Gordon Lee won the tip and held the ball for 3 minutes and 45 seconds of a 4-minute overtime, and then coach said, run the play.
Wow.
And they missed 2 layups that both of them would have won the game, and they ended up losing in the 6th overtime. That game took 3.5 hours.
That's insane.
I mean, just stuff like that you'll never forget, and certain moments and stuff that you'll never forget. like I said, I've gotten to travel all over the state for the newspaper, and got to meet a bunch of people and do a bunch of things, and doing TV work. I'm blessed to be able to do some of that stuff I've been able to do. And 2011, I thought I was done. I had gotten a job with Georgia Northwestern Technical College doing PA work or PR work, and thought that was going to be the end of it. And the job fell through kind of at the last second. And if I had taken that job, if it had all worked out, I wouldn't have got to see Ridgeland go to the Dome. I wouldn't got to see the Gordon Lee girls win the state basketball championship. I would have missed out on all this stuff. So it all worked out. And of course, I still ended up working with Georgia Northwestern as a sports information director for about 5 years, while I was the sports editor of both papers. It's been a lot of fun. I still get paid to watch sports, and that's worth all the hours.
Maybe the best job in the world.
Yeah, it's still worth the hours, and yeah, it gets tiring, and there are nights when I fall asleep in front of the computer a bunch because you've been up for 17, 18 hours, but you just got to find a way to keep it going because there's people out there that deserve to be recognized, and that's my job.
Last thing I'll say, and we'll get you out of here. The hardest working athletes in the world, you can't argue this, are wrestlers.
Oh.
What they go through on a daily basis and put their bodies through.
Yeah, there's.
I love that
toughest sport. That and cross country have to be the toughest sports to get any kids out there
to stay there.
Yeah.
To be consistent at.
Yeah.
And I love that you cover that, right? Because
wrestling became one of my favorite sports to cover. I'd been to like 2 wrestling matches in my entire life. Once, I remember I was about 11 or 12, we saw a friend's brother wrestle in high school, and I covered one for our school paper, or the yearbook staff, I think it was, one year I had to cover one. But I had friends that wrestled, but I didn't really understand it. It wasn't until I got the job at the paper and started, and back then, Ringo was running the show, and Lafayette was running the show, and Gordon Lee had a few years, and Heritage. All these teams we've had really great wrestling programs, or we used to. It's kind of dropped off. Hate that, but we've had so many good teams, and like I said, I've gotten to see some incredible teams, some incredible wrestlers, but I fell in love with the sport just after about the second time.
It's got to be
learning more and more about it, and yeah, it's the work they put in is incredible.
The back end of the and I agree with cross country too, because that's that's
we need you to come out for the team. What do I have to do? Run
for miles and miles.
Yeah.
But the back end of that, like I didn't really, I wrestled in middle school, a couple of years in high school. I wasn't great at it by any means, but the back end of that sport, like I played high school football, I played youth football, I played baseball, I've done everything. The hardest thing I ever did was wrestle.
Yeah.
And you're being asked to not eat
yeah.
and burn more calories than you would if you had eaten, and stay constantly moving. You have to stay in a weight class for 4 months at a time. Like, I appreciate you covering that, because those kids, I'm telling you, they put in more work in a week than most teams do in a season.
It takes more dedication and more discipline than just about any other sport there is, because like you said, you have to maintain that weight, because if you're even a couple ounces over, you don't get to perform. Yeah.
An ounce.
I've seen kids state tournament and not get to wrestle because
and that's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Like, and they
so hard
now they do these hydration tests. I was told. This is new to me because I don't know this process yet. But at the same time, like I know high school gives like a pound at like Thanksgiving, and then like a pound at like around region time, which is good, right? Because in general,
you gotta keep them safe.
Yeah, in general, when you got like we've been to national tournaments, and like you'll see kids like that are one. I remember one year, and I'll tell you this, and I'll be done. We went to Tulsa one year, and this kid was in the weigh-in line about 3 behind my son, and he had black rings under his eyes. And he looked like a starving African child. And he looks, and he's talking to my son. He said, "Yeah, man, I cut down from 83 to 67. And I'm like, "Dude, you're like 10. You're like 10. Now, I understand youth level if it's like 4 or 5 pounds, right? But you're talking about, 20 pounds, 15, 16 pounds off of like a 10-year-old kid.
Yeah.
Like, granted, and the sad part is like you do all these things and you may not win. You still may not win.
Yeah.
Like, you put your body through all this in the hope that you get your hand raised. And I appreciate you being there yesterday and supporting those kids because, man, all those kids work hard, and that's awesome.
And those things they're learning, all that discipline and work. I mean, that stuff's going to carry them
the rest of their life.
Yeah, and you play any other sport. I mean, it's only going to help you in the other sports too. I remember one kid. I won't say who it is or where it is or whatever, but I did hear of a kid one time. I think it was before state duels or something one year. They needed him in a different weight class to go up against another kid because they were going to shift some stuff around, have a better chance of winning or whatever. And the kid went to the hotel fitness center that night and dropped 5 pounds in a night.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And I was like, golly.
I don't know if you've ever met Ryan Tisdale. Ryan Tisdale ran the Eastridge Wrestling Club back in the day. And he told me one time that I asked him one time, I said, what's the most weight you ever cut in like 24 hours? He said 18 pounds. Jeez. He told me, he cut 18 pounds when he was in, he went to LFO, he wrestled at LFO. And he said, dude, I've never felt so bad in my life. He goes, I cut 18 pounds. He goes, it was technically like 17.6 something.
Yeah.
Right? But he said, I cut almost 18 pounds in 24 hours to wrestle in, I think it was region one year, right? And I was like, so how were you planning on maintaining that? And he says, well, I was going to cut it. I was going to get back up the weight. I was going to cut it. I was going to get back up the weight. Yeah. But he was so weak when he got there, he got knocked out in region. He told me the story. He goes, I overcut.
It's like bodybuilders. I've heard they cut trying to get so chiseled and stuff, and they're completely dehydrated.
Right.
They look great, but they're just
they
so
suck
weak.
all the water out of their body and out of their muscles and things. And like you'll hear you talk about bodybuilders, creatine. What that does is like hold water into your muscles.
Yeah.
And They a lot of these bodybuilders will tell you like, don't take creatine, don't take this, eat lean protein, yada yada yada. And then of course you're right, they suck down like the day before a competition. And it long term, I can see that in a short term phase, but a long term thing would be really detrimental to your health.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm glad they're doing the hydration thing now because it is more of a gradual step down than trying to all of a sudden, hey, I got to lose 6 pounds this week or 7 pounds this week or in 3 days or whatever. So it's a lot safer now with the way they're doing things. But yeah, back in the day, man, it was, we need you here.
Make it.
or this kid's dropping down, and I don't think we can beat him. So if we drop down another one, we got a better chance of winning. And yeah, it's changed the sport, that's for sure.
Absolutely. Scott, I've had a great time talking to you. Man, thank you so much. Thank you for all you do for the community, for our area. If I can ever be of assistance, reach out to me. Okay. I'm always somewhere doing something with some kind of sporting event, so just hit me up anytime. And I wish you the best for another 23 years, my friend.
I appreciate it.
This past week, we made our way to the Pro Football Hall of Fame in Canton, Ohio. Bmoney Beastin Athletics made their way to the Pro Football Hall of Fame in Canton, Ohio. It was super cool from start to finish to see all these legends. This family business we created, Bmoney Beastin Athletics, made it to Canton, Ohio, and see Johnny Unitas's jersey and Jim Brown. And right here you'll see Terry Bradshaw's helmet from back in the 70s and 80s. John Elway, Tim Brown. It was just one after another after another. Right here you'll see Pat Tillman. Pat Tillman, those who don't know, gave up a $4 million contract to leave the NFL and join the military during 9/11 and fight for his country. God bless his family. God bless him. He tragically lost his life. We have the utmost respect for Pat Tillman. As you've seen, Eric Dickerson's goggles were in the Hall of Fame, and here's the Manning family. They had a way where you could check out shoulder pads to see how you'd feel in shoulder pads. And then, of course, there's Jim Brown. Joe Namath. Willie Joe Namath, the one and only. Walter Payton, maybe the greatest running back to ever live. Emmitt Smith, Jerry Rice. They were inducted in the same year. I didn't know that. It was amazing. Ed Reed, maybe one of the best safeties ever of all time. Brett Favre, of course. Everybody's got to love Brett Favre. What a gunslinger in his day. Deion Sanders, old prime time. Look at him smile. Terrell Owens. You know, he's a Chattanooga guy. Went to UTC. Of course, Peyton Manning. You can't miss the forehead there. That was super cool. And these dolls were in a commercial. I thought that was super cool. Joe Burrow's jersey where he threw for umpteen 100 yards on a Monday night game. John Madden, before he passed away, signed a copy of Madden 21. I thought that was cool. The Super Bowl trophy for 2022. Right there. They had this section here where you could play Xbox. That was super cool. They were over there playing Madden football. The first Jacksonville Jaguars draft pick, Tony Baselli. We designed a championship ring. You see it on the screen now. Right here, Bill Belichick's Super Bowl coaching gear. Charles Haley, a 5-time Super Bowl champ. All right, guys, a pretty good episode this week around. I've been traveling a lot with my son wrestling. We were in Canton, Ohio, as you should have seen. We're heading to Toledo, Ohio this week, and then Tulsa, Oklahoma the week after that. So I'll be on the road a lot. I plan on hitting another interview in the next week or two, next couple weeks. We do custom apparel, branded apparel, team gear. Hit us up, info@bmoneybeastinathletics.com. It's getting around the holiday season. You guys want to have something special, ugly sweaters, whatever, hit me up, info@bmoneybeastinathletics.com. Like, subscribe, hit that little bell. You'll know every time we upload a new video. We're going to keep at it, guys. We're going to keep chasing here in the Northwest Georgia, Chattanooga area, and eventually we're going to expand out. But thanks for all your support so far. Reach out to us, info@bmoneybeastinathletics.com if you'd like to be interviewed, submit highlights, anything like that. If you'd like custom apparel, hit us up. We're always here 24 hours a day. I'll respond to you within a few hours. Thank you for all that you do. Thanks for all the support. Stay tuned and show up and show out.